Hello, and welcome to the Labor John podcast, where we wait for the inevitable sun death of the planet. In the meantime, we're going to talk about the working class history of Philadelphia and the surrounding world. My name is Young Sam James. I'm joined by my co-host.
I'm Gabe Christie, and I'm actively trying to avoid wet bulbs. And we are joined tonight by Dr. Blair LM Kelley. If you would like to introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Blair LM Kelley, as you just said. I'm the Joel R. Williamson Distinguished Professor of Southern Studies at the University of North Carolina. And I'm a writer and a mom and a person. And I'm originally from the Philadelphia area. So I'm super excited to talk to you.
Well,
Awesome.
we have been deemed Philadelphia's labor history gurus somehow.
Okay.
I'm not sure if we deserve that title, but we have it.
Strong, but you might be there.
So you've written a book, and if you'd like to introduce that briefly.
I've written a book. It's called Black Folk, The Roots of the Black Working Class. And I use my family stories to talk about the meaning of working life for Black people, beginning in enslavement and really running through the 20th century with some nods to the current moment of the sort of post-COVID labor market for African Americans. And I'm really excited about the book. I've been working on it for a few years. And looking forward to talking to you about it.
Yeah. I'll come fully clean and admit that I haven't finished it yet. Because
what chapter are you on?
Going through the washerwomen now.
Okay. Sam, how did you do? Did you read?
Oh, I'm not the reader. I'm the entertainment side.
So you haven't even gotten to the Philadelphia part of the book.
I play the role of the listener. I'm learning along with you.
Oh, okay. So everybody's learning today.
Yeah, everyone's learning today.
Well, you may not get an A in my class.
Oh, that's all right. I cheated in all my classes anyway.
So I wanted to start by asking what spurred your interest in delving into this history, and like, how did this book develop?
Well, I was asked about the possibility of writing a history of the Black working class. There's been a lot of writing and interest in the white working class in America over the past few years. And my editor was interested in what that might look like on a Black side. And he had read a book called White Trash, and it was very popular. And I was like, well, that's not a thing that's going on in Black life at all. So he was wondering, well, what is going on? And so Black Folk really is my response. I use the history of my family who were born, my grandparents were all born in the South and then migrated to Philadelphia eventually in the early 20th century. And I trace their lives to talk about the meaning that is in Black life around being in the working class and the degree to which being an organized and allied community enabled Black people to survive and then build networks of resistance over time and build unions and really create community out of very little that they had been given.
Thank you. And that actually leads into a perfect segue for my next question. Because the one thing that I've been struck by from delving into especially immigrant labor history is how much the kind of secondary and tertiary communal organizations feed into the eventual labor organizing. Like you'll have either fraternal organizations or mutual aid societies or religious institutions or anything like that that serve as kind of an outside nexus for organizing. And I was wondering if you could illuminate anything on that within the Black experience, and especially with the washerwomen and their, because I was really struck by their ability to organize so quickly after abolition and going from enslavement all the way into basically having a union monopoly in was it Jackson?
Yes, in Jackson, Mississippi. The washerwomen there organized a set of demands in 1865, which is just so incredible to me that, you know, as soon as the war is over, they're prepared. Mm-hmm. It's a lesson about the degree to which, even in enslavement, the enslaved understood the role of their labor, and they understood the world around them. They weren't confused. They didn't need someone to come and raise their consciousness about what was going on. They had a keen understanding. And so for me, it's a reminder that working people get it. Sometimes they need resources. Sometimes they need, money and time and space to pull together what they know, but they understand. And Black workers are no exception to that policy. And, you know, washerwomen, for your listeners, because I'm pretty sure we all just have washing machines at this point for the most part, or laundromats. But washerwomen washed all the clothes in the South, basically. And many of the clothes around the country, an enormous amount of Black women did that labor, because it was stigmatized for white women to do that in the South publicly, to sort of have clotheslines and things like that. So if they had any money, they would send their laundry out with washerwomen. And that connection was built in slavery and continued in freedom. And so they had a monopoly on that job. There really was very little competition. And so by having that monopoly, working together, they could set the rules about where they did the work. So they didn't want to work in white households. They didn't want to work under white supervision. It was dangerous oftentimes for Black women domestics who would suffer from sexual violence from employers. And so they would do that work at home. They would be able to watch their children. They would be able to tend to their own households, and they would do it on their own schedule, on their own calendar. And they would take holidays and take days off when they felt like it, you know, around Christmas, around Easter. They would not be available. And so the power of their collectivity really set the labor market in a profound way.
I find that incredible. I'm hung up in a good way on what you said there earlier about how the workers, they knew the strength of uniting with each other. As you said, yes, you need money, you need other resources occasionally, but just to come out and have that solidarity with each other, know what you're going through and what your neighbors are going through. I think that's pretty amazing.
It really is. There's a great book about washerwomen called To Joy My Freedom that came out when I was in graduate school by a historian at Princeton now named Tara Hunter. And she traces a strike that happens in 1881 in Atlanta that's massive and really shuts down the city. And so I've always known that washerwomen had, you know, the capacity for this kind of power. But what struck me when I was doing my research was how common that was, how I could find examples of smaller nascent strikes and threats of strikes all over the entire country. And it was really powerful to know that, you know, this one example was not the exception.
Yeah.
It was the norm.
Yeah, that really struck me. And did you uncover anything about the kind of organizing framework that may have existed before the union itself came to be? Like, what was it? Just the term is right on the tip of my tongue. Basically just an informal network that existed under enslavement, or was there any kind of more formal networks that existed before the union itself did in Mississippi? Sorry.
So I think what's important for us to remember is that slavery is a constant set of networks. To survive it, to care for people who are being displaced and sold away, and children who are separated from their parents, and folks who are, really suffering. There's a constant set of communications that are clandestine. There is an awareness, a conversation that's happening, that's going on all the time in order to survive. And so all of that was invisible for safety's sake to their slaveholders, but that they were highly organized in order to live. And so, this is evidence. So we can't know, right? No one's taking notes at the Hush Harbor in the woods, but we can see the evidence of it in the ways in which people come out of enslavement with a real vision about what they want to do in their freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, unionizing is hard today. I couldn't even believe I couldn't even fathom doing it under enslavement as a black person.
Yeah, I mean, but you basically have a kind of solidarity through strife. The extreme nature of what you've gone through puts you together.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to be kin. I talk about the degree to which people who were not even blood adopted each other in enslavement. And so that kind of bond, I guess my kid would call it a trauma bond at this point, really enables them to say, okay, we're in solidarity together. We're going to do this together.
I was like the quote from the movie Matewan, that we have nothing in common but our misery, and we might as well share it.
Yeah. But there it's misery, but it's also survival. It's also remaking of a culture and a people. And so, the evidence that we have from those folks of their music and their songs and their myth making and storytelling and their organizing is all amazing.
Yeah, no, it is really incredible how much of a groundwork was laid. And I mean, not just a groundwork, but really effective action was done.
Yes.
Even before before a more formal out in the open union was able to form. I also wanted to, because I've been looking more and more into how fashion and labor history have intersected. And I wanted to touch on a little bit I think it was a note in the section on washerwomen about how white women's fears around black washerwomen wearing their clothes when they didn't have possession of them. And that really stood out to me. And just the fear of not just the like class signifiers being taken, but the racial signifiers being taken away from white people.
Yes, there's like a constant sort of paranoia about washerwomen wearing the clothes, like washing them, I guess, quickly, and then washing them again and just sending them back out. So much so that, like, if Black women were seamstresses and made beautiful things, they would be accused of, having those things be stolen from someone. And so it's just I could find really little evidence that was what washerwomen were doing. It wouldn't fit what their schedule was for washing clothes, because they washed on a certain day. They had to have them dry. They had to press them with their homemade concoctions and starches and stuff. So it's not like you could just do that twice. But that paranoia about the loss of control speaks volumes, I think, in terms of people's obsession with the upcoming power of a free Black community that sometimes looked really good and took trips and did different kinds of things and wore beautiful clothing. They weren't used to the enslaved in those ways, but as free people, they saw that as extremely important. So that paranoia pops up.
It reminded me of, I've been trying to find the article all day, but there was an article in the IWW, or the Industrial Workers of the World's newspaper, Solidarity. I think it was from the late teens, but it was about a worker who had won enough, or whose union had won enough wages that he was able to afford a silk shirt, and his boss just absolutely losing his mind over the fact that he has a worker showing up in a silk shirt.
Oh my God.
And that class signifier has been taken away from him.
Oh,
Yeah.
That poor man.
I mean, he was just trying to look good.
Yeah.
Like, this is what I want to do with my check.
So going into the later 19th century and talking and getting more into unions, they haven't always been perfect. Is probably the nicest way to put that. And so I wanted to, or if you can elaborate a little bit about the history of racism that you uncovered within, especially predominantly white unions.
Absolutely. So the degree to which unions really signified a racial boundary, and particularly for rail workers, postal workers, I write about the Pullman porters and Black folk, and they were completely shut out of all white unions that, organized in their charter to be all white, to prevent the Pullman porters, who were the attendants of the sleeping cars, from having the same rights. And again, the Pullman workers, like the washerwomen, were dealing with sort of a racialized monopoly in their workplace. George Mortimer Pullman, who I'm sure you all know, really great guy, right? He creates sleeping cars to go on interstate trains that transform from daytime seating to nighttime sleeping. They're luxurious, they're comfortable. And if you want real luxury, of course, you have to invoke slavery, right? You want a Black manservant, like in the antebellum South, to come and wait on you hand and foot and tend to your every need. He should be elegant and unassuming, educated, but not too smart. And so this was George Mortimer Pullman's vision. I think he was from upstate New York, but this was his romanticized vision about what he wanted on the cars. And so he hired an all Black male staff initially. Eventually, there are some Asian men who are hired on the West Coast. But for the most part, Pullman porters are overwhelmingly Black men. And they are shut out of participation in other kinds of railway unions. And so they end up organizing and using their monopoly to organize their own union, which eventually gets recognized in 1937 under the leadership of a man named A. Philip Randolph, who was an active, important Black socialist that the Pullman porters were attracted to and excited about his voice and his newspaper. And they worked for over a decade under his leadership to get the union recognized and finally do in the New Deal. But the degree to which there's no space for them in these all white unions is really striking.
And how do you think that ended up affecting the labor movement as a whole? Because there was a fair amount of railway agitation throughout the early 20th century, but it never got to anything close to what they had in like 1877 or any of the larger strikes.
I mean, I think segregation is a deterrent to organizing. Pullman himself, segregated his white workers from his Black workers. He had, the housing and all those things for white workers in Chicago, but nothing for Black workers. So there was little solidarity that could be built there cross-racially. And I think it shortchanged what labor could be in the United States, when I think it still does. I think when people don't see themselves as allied across racial boundaries, they're shortchanging their power. But for Black workers, they're always seeking those alliances and those connections in their unions. And the Pullman Porters, were an amazing union because it really wasn't just about their success and their negotiation about their salaries or their hours. They used their power to really kickstart the civil rights movement in really key ways. So A. Philip Randolph starts what he calls a March on Washington movement. He threatens a March on Washington against FDR. And that leads to the desegregation of federal defense jobs because they're so afraid of hundreds of thousands of Black people descending on DC. But that March on Washington movement becomes the March on Washington of 1963 that we're all so familiar with. And Dr. King giving the I Have a Dream speech. A. Philip Randolph is there. And if you look at the signs, some of the signs are about jobs and equal opportunities in labor because of that long history of the Pullman Porters really using their position and their success in forming this all-Black union for the benefit of all Black people and the benefit of the nation as a whole.
Yeah, that's the one thing that a lot of people don't really remember is that the march was called the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. And a lot of that's left out a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And so putting A. Philip Randolph back in our memories all the time is great.
Yeah.
So obviously, as a specifically Philly labor history podcast,
let's talk Philly.
We have to deal with the I would say frustrating history of interracial unionism in the city. In that,
LOL.
Yeah.
Philly's pretty epic and like going on strike to get rid of the Black people. What is that, 1944?
Yes.
Yeah.
I knew that's where we were going.
That's not in the book. It's not in the book.
Yeah.
But I do know about that.
But what always strikes me with that one is that was 20 years after arguably one of the most successful interracial unions in American history with the IWW. And or I should say IWW Local 8 on the docks. And again, that was led by Ben Fletcher reaching out to other white organizers, or reaching out to white organizers rather than white organizers reaching out to Black workers. But did you uncover any other examples of interracial unionism that struck you?
No.
That's kind of what I expected as the answer.
I mean, so, I don't, in my chapters that deal with Philadelphia, deal with my grandmother and her work as a maid in the city. And so what struck me about her experience and the experience of a woman whose oral history I found, a woman named Minnie, who was from the Eastern Shore of Virginia, named from Accomack County, where my grandfather happened to be from. So that family is really all through that Philadelphia chapter. And what struck me was the degree to which Black workers had very little access to fair employment in those first migration generations. They were really relieved to be away from the strictures of segregation and sort of the harshest forms of violence. But the inability of Black folks to get jobs doing anything other than domestic work, and men to do anything other than sort of the most basic de-skilled, although I play with the idea of skill because I just don't even believe in like skilled labor versus non-skilled, because all labor requires.
You're amongst friends with that.
Yeah. Amen. I mean, I'll put a pin in that. We'll go back to that. But I'm struck by, the experience of my grandfather, for example. He was a carpenter, really talented. The house that I visited as a child, he built with his brother, who was a World War II vet. and a really great mason. And together they, built a house that you could walk around in.
Mm-hmm.
And yet he joined the Carpenters Union, and he could not get jobs anywhere that was remotely accessible to him to go in the morning time. It would take hours to get to a job, and then he would be treated poorly when he got there. And when he reported that to the union, they were like, go ahead and quit. You don't have to do this work. Really trying to frustrate him out of union work. And so it was more of a guild, right? It really wasn't intended to empower workers as a whole, but to shut some workers out and empower other workers, in his case. And for my grandmother, who was a very proud high school graduate, it was hard to graduate high school when you were Black and Southern. Oftentimes, many communities didn't even have high schools for Black students. So she was very proud of that, but she could not get a job. She wanted to work at the Philadelphia Navy Yard, but she worked for more than a decade as a domestic worker. And so having to be away from her family, away from my mom when she was very little, and work and live in a white home in West Philadelphia was really hard for her. And so the degree to which their experiences were tough and demeaning and more complicated than they become over time is really quite universal for so many people who are migrating in this generation. So Philadelphia is not particular in that way. Mm-hmm. We can see that the numbers of Black women who end up engaged in domestic work through the 1920s through the 1940s is enormous. It becomes the largest employment for Black women in the country. And so oftentimes we're thinking about women's work in this time period when my grandmother was coming to the city. Rosie the Riveter becomes our icon of women's empowerment. But Rosie the Riveter had a Black maid, and she watched the kids and cooked dinner and cleaned the house while she was at work. And we have erased that part of the history.
That goes into what I want to touch on next with the, because essential worker and gig economy have really become a very frustrating set of buzzwords in the past couple of years, especially from a historical perspective, because these jobs have always been there and their form hasn't actually changed that much. We've just changed the names around them. And they've also always been either racialized or defined by specific ethnic groups, depending on what location or period you're talking about. And if you can elaborate on that at all.
Yeah. And in the conclusion, I touch on essential work and COVID and I was writing, this during the pandemic, and the degree to which so many Black workers, international workers, folks who were CNAs, who were bus drivers, running garbage trucks, working in hospitals, had no time off. Postal workers, there was no go home and be safe for them. They kept going. And Black workers were overrepresented in that population of folks who just kept going when we didn't understand what the disease did or how it functioned or how to stay safe. And there was very little recognition of their sacrifices, their needs for decent healthcare or paid time off or any of those kinds of things. And so it's very profound to think, that we empowered them with this amazing title, right? Essential workers. And yet we do very little to recognize and reward the folks that actually make our country function when the chips are down.
We called them heroes. That should be enough.
No,
they don't need a raise or anything or a health care. We called them heroes, and we clapped for them.
Buy a house with that. Oh, so dumb. And so I wish that coming out of that moment, we can rethink what we need. And you see, the Great Resignation, I think, was a moment where, working people were like, this job actually sucks, and this is not a job I actually really want anymore. And we're still suffering from spaces and places where elite folks are coming and like, oh, there's not enough people here. Oh my God.
No one wants to work anymore.
Yes. You know why? And for me, it's so interesting that, we understand markets when markets are working against working people. We understand that, it would create wage suppression and this, that, and the other thing. But as soon as the market works in working people's favor, they're like, oh, what is happening?
It must be broken.
I'm confused. So just pay more and give better benefits and people will show up. LOL.
Yeah, or let them work.
That's the one. If you could say any good thing came out of the pandemic, was that it was enlightenment for a lot of workers, myself included, because I was working retail in a supermarket, and it was to hear people that people that I would never in a million years would say the word unionize. We're talking about unionizing, which was incredible. So, I mean, it really was something good that came out of it.
Yes, absolutely. I think unions are phenomenal. I live in North Carolina where they're, the hated word, but I'm a union baby, and my mother was a Philadelphia school teacher. So it provided a basic, decent life. You put your time in, you have healthcare and prescription coverage and insurance, and they bury you when you do it. Like,
that sounds good to me.
Yeah. I mean, everyone who works deserves those things.
Yes, they do.
So I want to, actually, we should go back and touch on skilled versus unskilled.
Yes, my favorite.
Can't leave that hanging.
Okay. So, I'm researching. People write history books and they just kick it. They just say stuff sometimes. But I'm afraid of being wrong about anything. So I go back and I figure out, okay, so if I were a washerwoman, exactly how did I wash clothes? What did that look like? How did I make the soap? How did I make the starch? Where was the wash pot from? What does your day look like? And so that's just like my weird proclivity as a researcher. And in doing that for washerwomen, for postal workers, for just everybody, agricultural workers, I'm like, well, on what planet is a person who can make soap, make starch, and press with a literal piece of iron with like a rag wrapped around it? You would not want to see your clothes if someone didn't have skills doing that kind of work. So it was something they learned over years. It was a skill they cultivated. They were known for being good. And so why do we call this unskilled labor? And so for me, unskilled labor was a code for Black and brown people do this job. And so we don't care about it. And, these are the being a brick mason or a carpenter or something, that's somehow skilled and different. And these things over here are unskilled. And so for me, I'm blowing up that paradigm because I think it's a racialized one. And I think it's false one. During the pandemic, I started watching those beautiful TikToks and reels about farm workers, bundling up vegetables really quickly.
UFW updates?
Yes, they're amazing. I can watch those all day because those men and women are providing our food in nice little neat packages that they can assemble in mere seconds, so much so that you can't even quite see like where the cut happens and where the pulling and and how it ends up so bundled and beautiful. Like that would take, anyone who doesn't have those set of skills, like a better part of 30 minutes to do. And so I'm like, this is just a fake thing that scholars have put on labor. And so I'm good on that. So there's no unskilled labor. There's skilled labor.
Yeah.
I know there's one, I was actually, because I do the same thing and just watch them because they're fascinating.
Yes.
There was one the other day of, I forget what they were picking, but it was a row of like 4 guys all laying on the bed of some tractor, getting pulled out over the rows of crops. and he had positioned his phone so that he could do a TikTok live stream, and it was just like precariously perched. And just the skill of knowing how to do that, because he's clearly done it every day for probably years.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I know if I tried to do that once, my phone would be under the tractor tire in like a split second, and I'd never see it again. And not to mention all of the then hand skill labor that he was doing, cutting and packaging.
So you're saying that making TikToks is skilled labor?
No.
So long as you're hanging underneath of a tractor.
Making TikToks, why?
Yeah.
Yes, there you
go.
Actually, while you're playing, I started making reels, for the book promotion stuff. And I'm like, this is very hard.
Yeah.
Editing is hard.
Yeah.
It is fun.
And I've done everything from food delivery to construction work to working in museums and like on the more academic side of things. And the rate of pay versus the actual amount of work required it's very, very different moving between those fields, between unskilled versus skilled labor.
Yes, absolutely. My first job was at a Super Fresh. And so they were timing us on like how quickly we could scan everything. And you had to memorize all the codes for the vegetables. And, I still can remember a bunch of them.
They still do that too. They still time
they still do. Yeah, well, I don't think they do that in North Carolina. It's a very different culture of a supermarket than it is in South Jersey. But sometimes I'm like, they should time y'all. Like, this is taking forever. But
do you not have Aldi's down there?
We do have Aldi's.
Oh,
we do have Aldi's. We have all kinds of.
Aldi's is our sponsor this week, Blair.
No. They're wonderful.
Thank you for saying something nice about our sponsor this week. No, I wish.
Wish got
You're
paid
ready.
for this.
You're ready.
So I want to end on a slightly higher note. So what is giving you hope for the future of either Black labor or just labor in general?
I think what we were just talking about in terms of the current moment and a new understanding that people have about the power of their own sense of determination, to see workers unionizing, to see people pushing back against these shifts toward the gig economy. They basically just mean your unlicensed taxi drivers and those kinds of things. It's really profound and important to see unions being part of the conversation more regularly with all different kinds of workers is so important and vital for our society. I think we'd be better off if even more people can consider it. But the example of historic Black workers is such a great reminder of the difference unions can make and the ways that unions can be concerned not only about the conditions for individual workers in their ranks, but also about affecting a better society as a whole. And I think that's such important work and admirable work. And I'm excited about hopefully using this history to help push that along for more people.
Yeah, definitely. And the past month in Philly has been slightly preoccupied with a certain group of people coming to visit. But it was the city's response to that, I think kind of speaks to what you were talking about, that we had it was a distinctly working class and very intersectional group of people coming back to say, basically, fuck off, Moms for Liberty. But I think that has definitely given me a little bit of renewed hope, seeing honestly seeing speeches being given by a Black trans Jewish woman, and from a distinctly working class and labor side as well. But yeah, do you have any questions, Sam? Or
I just want to say,
I don't want to completely monopolize.
No, it's usually how the interview episodes work. No, I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed your insight into everything, Blair. And we would love to have you back once I read your book, because
get to it. I mean, I'm gonna give you a grade when you're done.
Oh, please don't. I'm getting PTSD here.
I'm a good professor.
From what you said, and what's the word? Making talking through, or having your family talk through you, rather, through all this, was also made everything personal. And I think that also, it really, at least for me, it attached to me, and it kind of made me more interested in reading your book. Definitely.
It's not that old school history.
Yeah, it's not just like, it's just black and white. Here's the history. That's it. Here you go. Take it. It's, these are actual people who, speaking through you, that I have known in my life, and this matters to me. So maybe it should matter to you.
Yeah. And just, my family is exceptional to me, but they are common.
Yeah.
And what's been such a gift in talking to different audiences about this story and their story is, the things that people are remembering about their own families, and the connections that they are making about the important history that so many of us are making on a day-to-day basis. And so that's been really powerful to know that to storytell is a great way to engage and have a broader group of people know what actually happened in the past. History gets a bad rap, but if you make it pretty,
yeah, there you go,
interesting and personal, I think it can teach us a lot about what's possible.
Yeah. And we definitely need to have you back just to talk about the 1944 Philadelphia Transit Company strike as well.
I have an all Philly book, which I can't tell you about yet because I need a contract. But I researched that for that book because I have like a thing that happened in 1944, and I was like, "Oh, this also happened."
Well, we have a whole episode. We have a whole episode about it. So if you want some more,
I saw.
It won't be as well. I don't want to speak against Gabe here. Maybe it won't be as fleshed out as a whole book. It's a 30-minute podcast, so. And I take up half of it, so I mean it won't be as educational, but it's still fun.
Yeah, no, I mean I'm a Philadelphia lover, so
we're the best city, so
absolutely stinky as hell though. Oh my god, I was like, I remember the smell of Philadelphia, honey.
No, that's just Jersey.
I was walking around. I was like, okay.
There was a heavy wind that day.
Wow. I was walking all around downtown. I was like, this is something else. I do recall this from when I was a child, and it's still here. But it's an amazing place, and has been an amazing crossroads for so many folks. So it's real stuff. And I've never lived in Philadelphia, but I've worked there, and my family is there. And so
I think
great coming back.
I think we are qualified to grant you the title of honorary Philadelphian.
I don't want to do that. No, you get in trouble. Because if you say, that's why I never say I'm from Philly. Because if you say you're from Philly, people say, what neighborhood? What street? And so I will fail. Because my daddy has North Philadelphia, Norris Street. My grandmother was in Germantown. My cousins are in West Oak Lane. But
it's okay. No, it's okay. We have the key to the city this week. Okay, it's all right. We have this power.
I do love the Eagles and the Sixers, so there's that part. And I am a hater fan, like you're supposed to.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes, it's not so much about loving the team as hating everyone else.
Yes, and hating them if they need it.
Yeah,
it's a good spirit.
Well, this has been a pleasure, and I will definitely either set up a Google alert for whenever your next book drops, or have Nanda.
We just appreciate this one for a while.
Well,
yes, we will.
While. Give me a minute.
No, the pressure's on now.
History books take time, sir.
All right. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure, and you don't, or do you have anything you'd like to close with, or?
No, I just
plug your stuff.
I love.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you're interested in the South, come follow me. I'm at the Center for the Study of the American South. I'm the first Black woman to run it in its 30-year history.
Okay.
Wow.
And so I'm looking forward to it. And I'm brand new to UNC and excited to get going there. So that's what I'm doing next. And I, buy Black folk, like read that.
Yes.
I like it.
Or get out of the library or whatever. So